As soon as I heard that my sister had been missing for 16 hours, that she was no longer with that.
The following story is based on real-life criminal cases. Some names, details, and events have been altered for privacy and dramatic purposes. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, certain information may not be factually verified. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Some of these cases remain unsolved to this day.
In October 2024, Suzanne Simpson, a mother from Texas, vanished after a violent argument with her husband, Brad Simpson. The dispute had escalated to shouting and threats, leaving neighbors alarmed and concerned for Suzanne's safety. Suzanne had been described by friends and family as caring, devoted to her children, and resilient, someone who had endured challenges but always prioritized her family. Brad, on the other hand, had a history of controlling behavior and moments of aggression that had previously unsettled those around him. On the morning of her disappearance, Suzanne was seen leaving her home after a heated exchange with Brad. Family members later reported that she never returned and had not been heard from since. The initial search focused on Suzanne's usual haunts, her workplace, and nearby public spaces, but no trace of her was found. As the hours turned into days, concern for her well-being intensified, and law enforcement began a formal investigation. Investigators quickly discovered that Brad had engaged in unusual and evasive behavior. Surveillance footage and witness accounts revealed that he had been seen removing items from his truck late at night. Actions he initially claimed were routine, but later raised questions due to their suspicious timing and secrecy. Neighbors reported that he seemed tense and evasive when questioned about Suzanne's whereabouts, further heightening suspicions. Brad's relationship with Suzanne had been characterized by tension, and police began looking into claims of domestic abuse. While Suzanne had never publicly disclosed the full extent of any alleged abuse, friends and family described moments in which she appeared fearful or anxious around Brad. Investigators learned that Brad had previously exhibited controlling behaviors, ranging from limiting Suzanne's social interactions to monitoring her movements, creating a pattern that, in retrospect, cast a shadow over the events leading to her disappearance. Days after Suzanne vanished, investigators discovered more concerning behavior. Brad's business partner became involved, and law enforcement began to examine whether he had assisted Brad in concealing evidence or obstructing the investigation. This partnership, previously considered strictly professional, suddenly appeared to have a more sinister dimension. Items that had been in Brad's truck, including personal belongings and work materials, were missing or disposed of under unclear circumstances. Law enforcement obtained warrants to search properties associated with Brad and his business partner, seeking to uncover anything that could indicate Suzanne's fate. Throughout the investigation, Suzanne's family remained vigilant, pressuring authorities for answers and participating in searches of local areas, woods, and waterways. Their efforts, however, led to tension as Brad and his associates alleged harassment and undue pressure, creating a complicated dynamic between the family and law enforcement. Despite this, the Simpson family remained committed to discovering the truth about Suzanne's disappearance, working with detectives to provide any information that might aid in the case. By mid-November 2024, police had gathered significant circumstantial evidence suggesting that Suzanne's disappearance was linked to foul play rather than voluntary absence. Witness testimony, inconsistencies in Brad's statements, and physical evidence from his property began to form a troubling narrative. Investigators alleged that Brad's actions on the day of Suzanne's disappearance, including her reported confrontation with him and his subsequent suspicious behavior, pointed to intentional harm. Law enforcement also scrutinized Brad's handling of his personal property. Items removed from his truck, including clothing, electronics, and other personal belongings, were investigated for any signs of tampering or disposal that could conceal evidence. Brad's evasiveness and contradictory accounts heightened suspicion. In particular, authorities noted that he had engaged in behavior aimed at creating confusion or obfuscation, such as providing misleading information to neighbors and selectively answering questions from investigators. As the investigation unfolded, Brad was placed under arrest and charged with murder, despite Suzanne's body never being recovered. The charges were supported by the accumulation of circumstantial evidence, witness statements, and patterns of behavior consistent with abuse and concealment. Police alleged that Brad had engaged in premeditated actions to hide what happened to Suzanne, creating a web of deception that complicated the search for definitive answers. Brad's business partner, once thought to be uninvolved in the personal aspects of his life, was implicated as having assisted in disposing of items and potentially aiding in the concealment of Suzanne's disappearance. Investigators examined communications, financial transactions, and shared locations to determine the extent of the partner's involvement. While direct evidence linking him to harm against Suzanne remained limited, authorities considered him complicit in actions that obstructed justice and contributed to the ongoing uncertainty surrounding the case. The Simpson family's grief was compounded by the nature of the investigation. Public attention, media coverage, and legal proceedings placed enormous pressure on Suzanne's loved ones, who struggled to reconcile their hope for her return with the reality suggested by evidence. Friends described family members as devastated, expressing frustration at the lack of closure and the challenges posed by legal proceedings against Brad and his associates. Despite Suzanne's body never being located, law enforcement remained committed to piecing together the events leading to her disappearance. Investigators reconstructed timelines, reviewed communications, and examined physical evidence to determine what had occurred in the hours leading up to her vanishing. Their work focused on creating a coherent narrative that could support charges of murder and obstruction while guiding ongoing searches for any potential remains or further evidence. Brad's arrest and the charges against him marked a turning point in the case, bringing both relief and renewed anguish to Suzanne's family. While they could no longer search in uncertainty alone, the legal process presented new challenges. Questions about motives, potential accomplices, and the exact circumstances of her disappearance loomed large. Authorities emphasized that even without a body, sufficient evidence existed to pursue justice, relying on patterns of behavior, witness testimony, and circumstantial indicators to support the case. The legal battle that followed examined the intricate details of Brad's actions, his interactions with Suzanne, and the complicity of others who may have aided him. Investigators detailed the timeline of events, from the initial argument to the removal and disposal of items, emphasizing inconsistencies in his account and highlighting behavior suggestive of intent to conceal a crime. The prosecution's approach relied heavily on demonstrating patterns of deceit, abusive dynamics, and suspicious activity that pointed toward foul play.